When finding games to cover on Weird Fighting Games, you might be surprised to hear that I don't actively seek out these games. Majority of the games covered and to be covered I've played throughout the years. However, I've also had a fair number of weird fighting games just appear one day out of seemingly nowhere. This game is no exception. One day I was just chilling in one of the 30 different servers they have for Melty Blood current code, and some guy asks about some game he vaguely remembers. He describes it as a Smash Bros-like experience, but with Tsukhime characters. This piqued my interest, but before I could investigate, the same guy was just like, "Oh, I found it. Here it is." And there it was. For the first time ever, we're going to be looking at a platform fighter. Without further ado, welcome to Weird Fighting Games. Episode 6, Queen Busters. Queen Busters is a fan-made platform fighter from 2003, developed by TriPlus. It features characters from Tsukhime and the MMO Ragnarok Online. And I have to get this off of my chest. Queen Busters is an appropriate name for this game because getting it to work was a royal pain. I had already canceled this episode once before because, quite simply, I couldn't get the game to work. Thankfully, Type Moon June is making me give this game a second chance. To get this game to work, you have to play by its rules. First things first, you have to run the game in Windows XP compatibility mode, which is already a great sign. In this case, we get lucky and the game launches, but once you load into the game crashes. What gives? Well, if you press anything, and I mean anything, during the loading screen, the game just dies. God only knows why this happens. It throws an error like, "Oh, could not find Hisui.def. What do you mean you couldn't find her? She doesn't leave the house. She does laundry all day, puts chairs in inconvenient spots, and is probably mentally unhinged," respectively, of course. The game also has a tendency to crash in between matches, though I might just be really unlucky. However, I found that putting the game in full screen and messing with some of the texture settings mostly fixes the crashing issues, and we can finally play some Queen Busters. The game features a fairly simple yet charming 3D art style that looks like it was pulled straight from the Nintendo 64. I've always been a fan of early 3D games. Something about the aesthetic just speaks to me. Like Resident Evil 2, that's peak. The characters look really charming in this style. Specifically, Kohaku and Hisui look the best, as their simple designs translate well. The only real issue I have with the art style is that skirts and dresses are stiff as an ironing board, and they just look bad when the character is in motion. The effects don't fare much better. They don't have much punch and are rather simple, but they serve their purpose. The music is serviceable. There really aren't that many tracks. The main Tsukhime theme is worked into a couple of the tracks. I really like that track, and it really adds to this game's Tsukhime-ness, which is a word I just made up. In terms of gameplay features, this is one of the most bare-bone games I've covered thus far. You've got two modes: arcade mode and versus mode. Arcade mode works a bit differently than you'd expect, but versus mode works exactly like you'd expect. There is also a color edit mode, but you have to run a separate program to actually edit the colors. Color edit is an often overlooked feature in most fighters, and I really wish more games had it. Tri-Plus didn't have to include this, but I appreciate the extra programming and effort that went into this little nifty tool. Queen Busters doesn't have a story or anything, so it's another pure gameplay episode. I mentioned earlier that arcade mode was a bit different in this game. Each franchise has their own spin on things. The Tsukhime characters have a classic style arcade mode where you battle a series of opponents, while the Ragnarok Online characters have 3 stock 1v1s. I'd much rather have a standard arcade mode for all characters, and on top of that, you can't fight Tsukhime characters while playing Ragnarok arcade mode and vice versa. Just a silly design decision. Speaking of silly design choices, throughout the majority of the game, you play on 2 of the worst stages I've ever played in any platform fighter. I'm no expert, but I thought the entire point of a platform fighter was to fight on platforms. So why are both stages walk-offs with random obstacles and no pits? The whole point of platform fighters is to knock players off of the screen, so why include 2 stages that go against that? Okay, the park stage is passable, but the town stage is the absolute worst. It's almost impossible to KO from the sides of the screen unless you're right near the edge, and it has a lot of annoying platforms that just get in the way, leading to some absolutely tedious matches. That being said, is the gameplay any good? Well, kind of. Hear me out. I enjoyed playing the game, but I can't really tell if it's really that good or not, as my experience with platform fighters is limited. It's definitely not perfect. Specifically, the knockback feels all over the place. Sometimes I'd get hit at high percent and survive without a scratch, but then sometimes I'd sneeze on my opponent and they'd go flying, while in single-digit percents, and sometimes my opponent just refused to die despite being at 300%. It's radically inconsistent, and if there was one aspect of the game they had to nail, it was this, and they fumble the bag a bit here. Items are also in this game, but they're very rare and basic, either being one of 2 melee weapons, a healing item, or, a gun. It doesn't really add much, and it felt like they were there out of obligation and not purpose, if that makes sense. Specials, normals, and smash attacks feel good enough, but some special moves are just garbage. This is extremely prevalent when you play the Ragnarok characters. Queen Busters has a variety of your favorite characters to choose from. On the Tsukhime side, you've got Hisui, Kohaku, Ciel, Arcuade, Satsuki, and Akiha. Representing the Ragnarok Online side, you've got Novice, Swordsman, Archer, Magician, Merchant, Acolyte, and Thief. I assume these are classes from the game because I won't pretend that I know absolutely nothing about Ragnarok Online and only learned of its existence because of Queen Busters. I read the Wikipedia article, and apparently it's an MMO from the early 2000s. You can play it on Steam. I don't really have much to say about any of these characters. It is Type Moon June, after all, not Ragnarok June. So let's talk about some Type Moon. Arcuade uses a hand-to-hand slashing style. Ciel uses her black keys and trademark pile driver. Kohaku uses weapons hidden in her broom, drugs, and bombs. She is basically a domestic terrorist. Hisui's entire moveset is based off of this one sprite and Donkey Kong, strangely enough. Satsuki is a projectile character for some reason. And Akiha uses her demon blood to lay the smack down. All of the characters have similar normals and smash attacks, with the range and speed being the only big difference. You might expect some moves to be adapted from Melty Blood, but this game was released in 2003, a few months after the original Melty Blood, so Queen Busters couldn't use it as reference material. Plus, it's much simpler to copy something that works than to make a whole new archetype. Would it be cool for Hisui to have a unique moveset? Yeah, but her having Donkey Kong's moves is funny. Ciel has her Executioner outfit in this game, and I just love this design. From the gloves to the tattoos, she just looks ready to fight. It's a shame because I feel like the remake of Tsukhime made this design look bland, but Queen Busters has the classic look, so it's a W for Queen Busters. One detail that can be easily overlooked is the taunts. Each taunt is actually a reference to a specific sprite from Tsukhime, so here are a few examples. I'll always appreciate attention to detail. It shows that this game was made by fans. I have no idea where to put this, but these doujin games that I cover usually have a manual in the form of a website. It's nothing crazy, but just looking at these relics takes me back in time to that old internet. Things were a lot simpler back then. They're really useful because they usually have all of the characters' movesets with some nice character art, and it's pretty cool that That's right, this game has secret characters, unlocked by beating arcade mode with all characters. On your final character, you will face none other than Aoko Azuyoi herself as your ultimate opponent. She's got an interesting design in this game, and I've never seen it before. It reminds me of Jill from Resident Evil 3, and when I first saw her, I didn't know it was actually Aoko until I got into the match and she started shooting beams at me. Does anyone know if this outfit is official, or did Queen Busters just make this original outfit and put it in because they felt like it? She is a zoning character like you'd expect, with a plethora of powerful projectiles. She uses her suitcase to fight, she beats people with it, and can detonate it on command. An interesting interpretation of her, to say the least. I don't know what's up with this game and characters just having improvised explosive devices, but if you play arcade mode with Aoko, you get to face the ultimate challenge.
Ready? Go!
True Ancestor Arcuade, and she does not play around. It's a 1v3 battle where you have to fight her, Neko Arc, and Red Arc all at Castle Brunstead. It's a challenge for sure, but that just makes it so much more satisfying when you win, and your reward? You unlock Len. Len was in this game first before she was in Melty Blood, folks. Isn't that crazy? Len plays like Jigglypuff and can transform into a cat, as she is known to do. True Ancestor Arcuade is also playable, but only in versus mode. I didn't even realize that I unlocked her until I was recording some extra footage for this video, and I imagine you unlock her by beating her with Len. She plays a lot like Mewtwo from Super Smash Bros. Melee, and she has some of the most powerful attacks in the game, which is appropriate. Running into these characters was a shock, and it made me feel like how I felt when I ran into a new character when I was playing Smash Melee as a kid. Back then, I didn't have internet, so each new character was a great surprise. I didn't expect Triplus to put secrets like this in the game after seeing how initially bare bones it was, but I really appreciate it as this is something we really don't have anymore in modern fighting games. Queen Busters, bugs aside, is a nice little homage to Super Smash Bros. It's not trying to redefine the wheel or do something new, but it captures the essence of a platform fighter. The choice of having a Tsukhime and Ragnarok Online crossover could be seen as weird, but I respect Team Triplus for just mashing what they liked together. Who cares if it makes sense? It's their game. That being said, Queen Busters isn't the most robust experience, and you're better off playing Super Smash Bros. Over it anytime, but there's definitely still fun to be had. If you like Tsukhime or Ragnarok Online, give the game a try. You really have nothing to lose. If you like platform fighters or Smash, you might even enjoy the game more than I did and see something I didn't. Who knows? Although, I think it's crystal clear that Queen Busters is a weird fighting game. Next time on Type Moon June, the end is almost upon us. We've looked at a number of weird fighting games, but trust me when I tell you I've saved the best game for last. Until that time comes, thanks for watching, and bye for now.